Hello, can you hear me? That's negative. Damn it. Now can you hear me?
I can. It
Okay.
just does not like you. Okay.
It does not. It does not. I don't know what I just
Honestly, we can probably keep going. I can edit this out later because I've sort of finally kind of figured out how to use Odyssey.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. All right. Let's do this then. In the grim darkness of the far future, there are nerds here to talk about it. I'm Joel.
Tomorrow.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody in between to Warhammer and Weebs, a podcast for Warhammer about Warhammer and everything else that catches our interest. You can check us out, of course, on warhammerandweebs.bisky.social or on Tumblr, Warhammer and Weebs. And of course, there's the YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Now, before we begin our topic of the week, Kamara, how you doing? How's this week going for you?
Not bad, not bad. I finally got over the worst of my sore throat. So it's good to hear because we have a lot to talk about.
Indeed, we're fine. I'm getting over the daylight savings time, and now everything is still sunny, even though it is a 5:45 at night. So, which is nice for me because that means when I get to go out for dinner at late night, I don't have to worry about it being super dark. So I always like that.
Oh,
But
it's pitch
yes,
black here.
oh gosh,
Well,
oh yeah,
moderately. It's city pitch black.
that's fair. That's fair. But yes, we do have some fun topics for us to discuss. Well, topic in question. So, Kamara, take us away. What are we talking about this week?
We are finally getting into the heart and soul of
Mm.
Warhammer 40K.
Ah, yeah.
Space Marines.
Hooah. Ooh.
It's nothing, the entire franchise of 40K rests upon the incredibly broad, strangely armored shoulders of
Mhm.
Space Marines and their Primarchs.
Well, every franchise is sort of surrounded around a armor-looking soldier. I don't care what Star Wars fans say. Stormtroopers are kind of the icons of Star Wars, for better or for worse. For
Are they? I would have.
I don't know. I think for a generation of kids, they probably are. Maybe our generation, they're more lightsabers, but like, definitely think for OT kids, there's definitely that stormtrooper like, or an X-wing.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, I can see it. I guess. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because for OT, because prequels and then sequel generations totally got spoiled with that because by the time you
Clones
got
and first order troopers. So
first order troopers,
clones definitely though.
clones,
So
absolutely, like awesome clones. Yeah, PT and ST kids, and arguably even actually technically we got spoiled too because well I at least was a 90s kid, so I got the I grew up with the beginnings. I grew up with I think by the time I was like cognizant of Star Wars, it was shortly after Revenge of the Sith. But I was playing Knights of the Old Republic.
it's true. I just don't remember to get the Phase 2 clone troopers, which look like stormtroopers, and then, there's always a stormtrooper variant toy out there somewhere. There's one that comes out every year.
Oh
Gotta get
yeah,
them.
I love how the helmet changes over time throughout the Clone Wars.
That's good stuff. But back to Warhammer and their trooper icon that probably
Yes,
makes them big money.
yes, sirree, Bob, and everything that starts with stormtroopers. It begins with the Unification Wars, and we talked about this at length. For those who forgot the other recordings or need a refresher on the previous episodes, uh, Emperor, big, tall, shiny guy, goes ahead and he's like, "Eh, well, we're kind of screwed over because entire warp got weird. Technology is off. There's gods and demons everywhere. I should probably step in." It's a bunch of these bioengineered warriors, steps up, conquers Earth, reconquers Earth, brings everyone together, hits the stars, goes out and about, and creates a massive legacy before he gets betrayed by his own kid and then ends up on a throne as a life support unit. Before that, though, we have an integral time where he's working on his vanguards. Because as we mentioned before, you need people to lead your infantry, special forces, etc. What you're doing.
Mhm.
That is his Primarchs. Unfortunately, he went ahead, tried to cheat the Chaos Casino,
And the house won.
failed.
The
The
house won.
house won, and they didn't exactly have the ability to take him into the back room and beat him senseless, so they stole his kids instead.
As one does.
As they do. That said, there's a fair bit of leftovers that he's been working on and continues to work on that produces his kids' kids. And the first of that is of course, the First Legion. Now, at this point, they don't have their name yet. Some different legions kind of get their names through their deeds or their methods of warfare and combat. These are the first, and so they're not really. They do have something of a name, but it's not one they really adopt. Some will end up. They're often called the Sixth Host, and at some point, when we delve, it will probably not be this episode because the First Legion, the Dark Angels, as they would later be called, they have groups within groups within groups that are utterly fascinating, but man, they are complicated. And man, is there so many.
Is the First Legion like the equivalent of the 501st in some way? Or like the best of the best?
Yes and no. The thing is that every Primarch has a thing. The First Legion, like each legion is named after the number in which their Primarch gets created.
Mm-hmm.
And so, First Legion, First Primarch is arguably, and we'll talk about it in a few moments, the first and effectively the most stable, and also kind of the template on which everyone else comes later.
Gotcha.
So, if you have Thunder Warriors, your beta Space Marines, these are kind of the beta of the modern Space Marine. They are, because you can't just churn these guys out onto the field and expect them to just hit the ground running. There is test process. There is personality types. You have to test the certain ages. You have to test the various thresholds. You have to test their armor, test their tactics, test their ability, test their weapons. And that was their job. Everything that later legions would get that was finalized and more or less set in stone, and the general manuals of how to operate as your basic Space Marines before you add your weird little Primarch stuff into it got tested and finalized by these guys. And
Just
down
imagine like
the
the secretary writing down the manual right now. Like, this is the first manual. Make copies for later.
pretty much it's why some people like down the line kind of like side-eye Gilliman at times, because the Codex Astartes is a masterclass in war tactics and just general how to be a Space Marine. But a lot of it is, to say it's common sense is a little mean, because he was very, very good at what he did, and what he observed, and he did create the fundamentals of how a chapter down the would act, which they followed for the better part of 10,000 years, the vast majority of them. But also, a lot of it was him looking at not just his own experiences, which is perfectly valid, but what his bros were doing, and not exactly citing his sources.
Oh, damn. It's like, I came up with all this, not my bros. They didn't do no, my bros, I don't wanna talk
We'll
about my
we'll talk about it when we get to the Ultramarines and their reputation, but that's a ways off, depending on how things goes. But the First Legion, they're kind of your jack of all trades. And they had to be, because every other Legion, every other Primarch, kind of has the thing they're good at. You know, you got that one, they're good at defense. You got that one, they're good at sieging. You got that one, they're
Mhm.
good at blacksmithing. You got that one, they're good at stealth. You got that one, they're good at speed attacks. But the First Legion kind of had to be good at all of them. They didn't necessarily perfect it to a point the way other legions would, and
Mhm.
the other way other legions would become far more specialized, but they still had to be very, very good at pretty much every element of martial prowess and warfare because they were the first. They had to shoulder that burden.
Makes sense.
And so you have the First Legion effectively being one of the few who don't really get like tripped up by things outside their general wheelhouse
Mhm.
because they've kind of have a long history of dipping their toes in everything that they're and they have their own specializations at some point like down the line they invest in specializations to ensure members of everyone of all of their squads and their chapters and their groups have that experience that then can be added to the whole, which means they're never really caught off guard.
That makes sense.
So the Emperor, and down the line, as he conquers more territory, he starts getting from for specific points and specific groups for different legions. He kind of took from everyone he could for the first legion. It's far rougher, but that also means again, unlike other legions, it adds to that ability to kind of adapt to everything because instead of certain groups in a specific region having a specific way that they operate and do warfare that gets expanded and honed and specialized as they become 8 foot tall super soldiers
Mhm.
that are then linked almost like metaphysically to this absentee dad that's somewhere across the galaxy. The Dark Angels were coming from different experiences and different groups and different memories and different ways they were able to fight and survive, which added to that ability to kind of be that jack of all trades. And it really showed its prowess and ability when they were there at the last battles of the Unification War, or rather, last battle of the Unification War, where where their one of their biggest jobs, one of their big major battles, was murdering their predecessors.
Damn.
As we talked about it before, Thunder Warriors, very strong, very big, very durable, very unstable. They were not meant to last. They were not meant to see the Great Crusade. And so, while the Custodies were out there as well, helping um, do
Mhm.
all of this, you know, genociding, which kind of worked, so were the Space Marines. And to be fair, the Thunder Warriors saw the writing on the wall But there was only so much they can do. There were some who survived, and maybe we'll talk about it another time, because there were some that survived almost to modern day
Oh, wow.
through just guile and like tenacity and a lot of cannibalism. But they went ahead and that was one of the first legion's first major acts and first major secrets. And this would become a trend because while the emperor is again building these other legions and also sending them
Mhm,
out to the stars, equipping them,
mhm.
refining their specializations, figuring out okay, they can do this, they can do this, they can do that. The Dark Angels, being the first, had a special place almost at his side.
They're
He
like
was
the elite
able
of the elite. They're like the elite guard kinda situation, or like the special.
they were it was more they knew when to keep their trap shut.
Gotcha.
And they were also, and this will come up later as we talk about their Primarch, but they had a grim sort of determination of their place in the universe. They didn't have any illusions of grandeur about regarding their creation.
Mhm,
Whereas you would get other legions down the line that again they're bringing in other cultures from Terra that
mhm.
are now being implemented into these various legions and shifting slightly with
And
their
what do you mean
bodies.
by other cultures exactly? Like, what are the first legion all Swiss or something? Uh,
Well, the first legion was like more of a melting pot compared to other groups and other legions, because other legions tended to be taken from various regions as those regions got, you know, conquered and brought into this growing empire that the emperor was building.
bringing
Unlike the
people from
first
the
legion,
American Legion. America. Or what's left of old America.
honestly, not you're not wrong. We'll talk about that at some point down the line.
Oh, no. There's a legion
Well,
where well, when we started reconquering America.
uh,
America.
the countries and as we knew them
Mhm,
are pretty much long gone. They all have different names and different like region. Like they're pretty recognizable to an extent. Like
mhm.
okay, that region is coming from like the west coast of Africa or something. That legion's coming from what at some point was probably Eastern Europe. That legion is coming from the mountainous regions of the Appalachians or something. Like
Right.
they have different names, but you kind of get it, based on geography because
This used to be Russia.
yeah,
Used to be Russia.
yeah, pretty much. This used to be we again, you can't I can't wait to talk about the guard.
Oh, boy.
Um but yeah, no, where these other legions were coming from tended to come from specific regions and bringing that into that culture and that sort of traditions that were evolving as they evolved.
Right.
The Dark Angels had this sort of grim countenance of regarding their existence. They didn't necessarily tend to care for like glory. They didn't tend to care for great celebrations and ceremonies. They didn't tend to dream of some life after the Great Crusade. They were built for war, and they didn't have any illusions about that.
They're like the clones almost, but sadder because at least I feel like the clones had some thoughts about what could happen afterward before, well, you know what
Oh
happens.
yeah,
Order
yeah.
66, and they all good dunked, like, "Goodbye."
Well, this would cause problems down the
Mhm,
line a little bit, as we'll come to talk about.
mhm,
But this sort of countenance, this ability to keep secrets, this sort of willingness to obey orders, this meant that of all the legions, they were pretty much the most trusted of the Space Marine legions for the Emperor. He had them on assignments. He gave them secrets that were buried and lost to time and history. He gave them a lot of technology, ancient, powerful technology to be used at specific circumstances and battles and locked away that others didn't get to have. So, and while they did have that grim countenance, they did have that kind of a pride in that, because there is this inevitable pride that comes from being the first legion trusted by the Emperor to do the things that he thinks others can't handle. It didn't cripple them exactly, but it was a major part. That pride was, while not necessarily evident and exuberant and extravagant the way other legions might have been, it was an innate part of them. And this is where we shift over to Dad.
Did you say Chad or
Dad? Their dad. Eddie
Dad?
Primarch.
Oh, Dad. Their dad. Eddie Primarch. Gotcha.
Because think about, and again we've talked about it. The thing about Primarchs and their kids is that when nowadays in the more modern 40K, Space Marine chapters tend to, when they're getting aspirants and recruits that will later become Space Marines, they tend to look for different qualities. They don't just pluck people off the street, usually. They look for certain qualities in their Space Marines because those are qualities their chapters tend to exhibit on higher levels, extreme levels. And
is this like, I hate using these terms, but I always feel like it's like, are these chapters like the equivalent of like Hogwarts houses?
Yes and no. You'll see it as we talk, because as we talk about the various legions turn chapters, because it's a little, well, if you really want to narrow it down, if you really want to put things in broad strokes, you could argue yes.
Okay.
But it does sort of simplify them a bit too much, because they are still people. You can have, and I use this because they are, again, one of the most prevalent examples, Ultramarines, who are, Daddy Gilliman is good at logistics.
Right.
You can have, and so you have an Ultramarine that is very, very good logistics, very, very good at precision, very, very good at knowing where every little thing goes and how it's supposed to go, and knowing how all the cogs in the machine, of which he is one, is supposed to move. To become not simply a little piece, but an unstoppable train that plows through your enemies.
Right.
That said, you can have an Ultramarine that goes ahead and has the type of battle bloodlust that rivals a Space Wolf.
Ooh.
You can have a a Raven Guard, who, well, yes, they're the stealthy ones, might have a predilection for explosions. It's rare. It's not, it's rare, but it's not impossible, because they're human beings. What the gene seed of their Primarchs do, and part of the reason that they do tend to look for certain elements in their aspirants in the more modern 40K, is because it takes certain characteristics that their Primarchs have
Right.
and then it amplifies them in the Space Marine.
Here's another example. Maybe this is a better example because I just thought about this. Is it kind of like how in Evangelion the school is like secretly being used to find kids that are going to be good Ava pilots? So they're like always looking for like certain traits from people. Be a
This
space
is another
marine.
point. Well, I have to say yes and no.
Okay.
And
Okay.
this is a conversation more for another day
That's
when we get to talking about Space Marine biology, and because
that's
when
fair.
we talk about their biology, we'll have to talk about their recruiting practices as well.
Okay.
But when it comes to, the Dark Angels, you can see a lot of the characteristics of the Primarch is innate because each of the Primarch is sort of a little aspect, so to speak, of the Emperor himself, heavily diluted.
Okay.
But it also comes down to their environment as well.
Right.
And
Well,
for
they
the
didn't end up with
Lion,
good old Kents, that's for sure. Well, maybe one of them did. I don't know, but doesn't sound like it.
some of them did. Some of them were a little less fortunate.
That's fair. That's fair.
But the
Some
Lion,
of them didn't get mom pause.
it was kind of a mix of both
Fair.
because he got punted across the galaxy to land on Caliban, and Caliban wasn't too far away from the Eye of Terror. You remember that big gaping hole in space?
Yes, yes, yes.
And what that distance to the what that nearness to the Eye of Terror, it also meant that warp energy was far more prevalent on the planet itself. So Caliban was plagued by these massive, giant, mutated, dangerous beasts, and they were bloodthirsty monsters. And the human population, they had some little monasteries that they tended to rely to be defended on by these orders of knights.
Mhm. Ooh, yikes.
And this is where we mention the obligatory aspect element of 40k, and that a lot of things are very on the nose.
Always something.
These knight orders, they they would have these ancient, dark age technology,
Mhm.
and they spent millennia repairing and keeping this stuff intact the best they could, because when they would pass it down, knight to squire, family to family, because it was very valuable, and it was kind of the only way any of them had a chance against these beasts.
Mhm.
Um, so you have these knights who are struggling for thousands of years, and it's enough that they survived. Like, again, they weren't all consumed, but it's not an easy battle. It's not an easy life, and so that element of knighthood, that element of, training and honor and chivalry and very medieval esque methodology and mannerisms with a sci fi twist was a major part of the society.
Mhm.
So imagine their surprise when several of them one day they come across a kid, preteen, just wandering, pretty much feral, and he is weirdly big and weirdly muscled, and also has been surviving in the wilds ever since he was quote unquote born, which
Damn.
means he's been fighting and killing monsters. The same monsters that, like, several of them in groups struggle to defeat while wearing power armor and using power swords.
Yeah, I'd be a little weirded out too if I saw a kid like that. Like, what the heck? What's this kid on? Can I have some?
So, well, their first response, the vast majority of them were like, "That's the most dangerous thing on this planet. We should kill it."
I mean, I could see that.
Luckily, uh, uh, there is one man, Luther, and he was a well-established knight
Mhm.
of Caliban, very well understood, very well respected, and he goes ahead and he's like, "All right, let's maybe not murder the baby child thing. Let's give him a
Not try.
chance."
Let's not try murder. That's a good idea. The other night they're like, "Oh, we want to murder." No murder.
Like they like, okay, let's give him a chance. Let's go ahead and help, maybe take this, primal being, this primal weird kid thing, and see if we can help him. And with that, Luther suddenly found himself with a sort of brother son student,
Hmm.
and they named this weird feral kid Lionel Johnson, which is
Lionel
the
Johnson.
the lion, son of the forest.
Right. Makes sense.
Very literal. And so Luther would give this kid, an education. He would teach him their ways, their sense of honor, their sense of justice, the way the order worked, how to
Mhm.
be a person instead of just a feral beast. And
Makes sense.
so Lion grows up to be, as Primarchs do, he grows up very fast, he grows up to
Mhm.
be very big, he grows up to be very smart, and he grows up to be very dangerous.
Ooh, yikes! That's not good.
Well, it is good for the people of Caliban,
That's okay.
because that same grim determination that would be seen in his sons in the First Legion is amplified in the Lion. He sees these beasts of Caliban
Mhm.
as monsters to be slain. He sees them as, okay, there is a target I have, there is a task that must be done,
Mhm.
we must get it done. And he leads a massive crusade across the world to slay all of these beasts.
Oh wow.
And he does manage it. It takes years and lots of deaths because other people are very, very squishy.
It's always
But
funny where like the Primarch probably forgets. Oh yeah, you guys are all squishy, squishy.
he had an air about him, or like
Mhm.
you can't you can't not see this like 12-foot tall armored blonde man with the air of a king and wielding a sword, striding out into the heat of battle.
King
Um,
Arthur on steroids. King
quite
Arthur.
literally,
I
quite
know, right?
literally. And
Uh,
so you can't see that and not feel something. And citizens of Caliban, as it was, they felt something. So these various night orders, especially the Lions, suddenly got massive influxes of recruits who, instead of cowering in their caves and holes or whatever. They're like, you know what? No, let's stand up. Let's take the fight to them. It's time to go ahead and finally. It's either them or us.
Mhm.
And if I die, I'd have died doing something noble and brave, fighting besides the lion, as is a great honor. And so it takes a while. There's a fair few betrayals because not everyone liked the lion shaking up things, but he does do what many Primarchs tend to do, which is become the unopposed leader of his planet, wiped out, genocided all of these great beasts.
Oof. Well, hey, I mean, hey, you got rid of the beast. That's what matters.
And as does tend to happen in the stories like this is the point where the Emperor pops up.
Hey, son, are you winning, son?
I mean, actually, like, unironically, that does tend to be the conversation with him and most of his kids.
Every time he finds him, he just goes, "Are you winning, son?"
The answer is generally yes. Some it was no, but we'll talk about it when we talk about it. But for
Are you
Lion,
winning
it
at
was
winning at life?
unequivocally yes.
I am
And
winning
so
at life. That's just hilarious.
the Lion Emperor comes. The Emperor comes members of the Lion's Legion, the First Legion. Again,
Mhm.
this trusted legion. These and automatically these legion knows, like, they come in, they're like, oh yeah, that's dad. There's dad right there. They just know. The kids just know when they find their Primarchs.
Oh, wow. Dang.
Yeah, when Space Marines come, like, you can tell when you can't miss a Primarch. Space Marines have a sort of thing about them that is amplified several times over with a Primarch, and when it comes to a Space Marine, they know when they lay eyes on their Primarch. They're like, "Oh yeah, no, you're my dad."
Oh, wow, it's like instinct.
Oh yeah, they feel it. It's just instant. And so the Lion swears loyalty pretty quickly to the Emperor,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, that happens sometimes. Oh,
I mean, I'm always curious, like, that I have a feeling that sometimes it's a maybe a few beatdowns needed before they swear loyalty, or they're like, "Oh, you're not my dad." That
I mean
teenage
that
rebellion.
it did happen. Like this, it does happen. Not every. Sometimes the Emperor gets really creative. Sometimes in how he convinces his kid to join him.
Oh, boy.
Um, but this goes ahead and he pretty much goes ahead. He pretty quickly goes ahead and it joins the Emperor. He has his world joined to the Emperor's Imperium, and very quickly, Caliban's, as does tend to happen with the Imperium, this isolated small world gets pretty much changed overnight as Imperium comes down and they're like, all right, oh, is that an ancient forest with, centuries of tradition and culture and legends surrounding it? Cool. There's minerals down there. Let's dig.
Of course.
Yeah, a
Pay
lot of
the way.
they start modernizing pretty quickly. But the Lion, and importantly for the Lion, he is reunited with his kids. And he goes on to give them their name, the Dark Angels. They had often already been called his angels, but it was kind of like what do you call it? It was kind of like a quiet sort of, not quiet. It was sort of a thing spoken to them by their enemies because there's few things more terrifying and awe-inspiring than the armored 8-foot tall dude. And so, to this day, like, Space Marines are often called his angels, the Emperor's angels.
Mhm.
That comes from the Dark Angels and the actions of the Sixth Host, the first Legion. That sort of name stuck, that impression of people's impression of Space Marines, that stuck, and it continued on to the day. And the Lions solidified it by saying, all right, you guys are kind of a grim lot. I respect that. You're the Dark Angels.
Oh, yeah.
So he goes ahead and he quickly goes ahead and he starts integrating with the vast majority of his legion. They're a little scattered because legions didn't like all march as one massive unit usually. They
Mhm,
tended to get split up, especially when they're not reunite when they're before they've been reunited with their Primarch. They
mhm.
tend to get split up across the stars because it's a big galaxy. You can't just have them all moving. That's a lot of there's planets to take over. Let's go. And so
Well, also,
um
you don't, break you learn that armies eventually learn, like, you can't just have a big chunk army and just go. You gotta, like, spread it out, you know? You gotta have divisions and self-divisions and, right?
yeah.
Not like the olden days where it's just like, "Everyone get together and just charge and hope for the best."
The funny thing is though, and that's why I really want to talk about their structure in another episode. The Dark Angels stuck for a long time with a pretty ancient structure of how they of command that
Mhm,
most of the other legions had gotten rid of. They have, again, the Dark Angels have circles within circles within circles, and we'll talk a little bit about them when we
mhm,
get to one of their big secrets and
mhm,
big issues.
mhm,
But their structure, their command structure was fascinating then and now. But, the lion goes around, he's collecting his kids,
mhm.
and he's also leaving some of his kids back on Caliban because, well, as is tradition, when a Primarch is found, the home world they were on pretty much becomes the recruiting world for the Legion.
Interesting.
So you double check everyone's clean, make sure everyone's pretty human, and then from there they just start recruiting from the population. So for various jobs, the Imperial Guard, the Imperial Navy, and of course Space Marines.
Ooh,
And so they're starting to make more Space Marines, and this Caliban kind of becomes the home world, the fortress world of the Dark Angels. Well, the Lion goes out into the stars. He's reunited with his son. He's restructuring them. He's trying to get their measure. There were a lot of fights actually. While the Lion didn't necessarily fight the Emperor, a lot of the various commanders of various groups of Dark Angels would fight the Lion
mhm.
and to get the measure of him, because they're like, okay, yeah, you're my dad, but can I trust you to lead my men? And he won pretty handily, and it was pretty easy to get there on their good side, and they're like, okay, yeah, okay, you've got the competence, you've got the skill, cool. And Lion, he's not one to be idle. He gets his legions together, and he focused on his mission, which is kill the enemies of the Emperor. And he
Mhm.
does this to an incredible degree. Remember when I told you before that there used to be a lot more alien species?
Yep.
The Great Crusade did a lot of that work, destroying them,
That's
and one of the major offensives was what would become known as the Rangdan Xenocides.
Oh, that sounds lovely already. Stories. That
And
sounds
of which the Lion was a major player of that, one of the primary commanders of that. And he devoted his legion into fighting this war against a actually very terrifying alien species. It took several years. It took like decades to fully kill this species off.
Mhm.
Um, the Dark Angels had been fighting them even before Dad came back, and
Oh,
then
wow.
they took a pretty hefty loss, a few thousand uh Space Marines the first time, but they find out later that was just like a colony.
Oh, gee.
The Rangdan come back with a massive armada, and it's well, there are other legions that are involved in this, but it was the Dark Angels and I think arguably to a lesser extent the Space Wolves that put the most bodies into this,
Mhm.
and as such they took the heaviest of losses, but they were proud to do it. This was their job. This was their reason for existence. Kill the Emperor's enemies. Complete his work. Do what you have to do.
I have a feeling that there's gonna be no not Warcraft, Warhammer character that isn't responsible for at least a little genocide.
Just always assume that someone has done a genocide. Like, even the nicest of Primarchs and nicest of characters, like, no one in Warhammer is effectively innocent. It's just different degrees of bad. Like, even my favorite Vulcan, he has some skeletons in that closet, and most of them are charbroiled.
Damn. You could be the nicest person in Warhammer. It's like, I may be responsible for like a little genocide, a whittle,
Oh, yeah.
couple
It's
million,
just different degrees of bad.
couple.
It's just some are less. There's just some are less bad than others, and some detour into full on sadism.
Damn. No, that makes sense.
So, they take a lot of hefty losses with this Xenocide, but they do complete the task, and it very much solidifies the Lion's reputation as a steady, grim, determined, stalwart commander. He's not dumb. He's very, very intelligent. He's very good at what he does.
Mhm.
And people come to trust in him. He might not be the best guy to always be around. He's not exactly always the dude you want to share a drink with. In fact, a lot of his brothers kind of think he's a stick in the mud.
He's like that. He's one of those kind of commanders where he's just like, oh, you're a buzzkill, man. Live a
He is
little.
very mission oriented. He doesn't really care about glory. He doesn't care about praise. He doesn't care about, accolades. He's okay. You gave me a task. I'm going to do that task. I am going to complete that task to the letter. All right, that task is done. What next?
Not someone who bends the rules, I guess, either, too. Or,
Again, very grim, very determined, very. And every Primarch arguably serves a role. Well, no,
mhm.
I won't say arguably. They serve a role, not just as aspects of the Emperor, not just as what they can do in the warfare, what the Emperor needs them to do for him.
Mhm.
And it is hinted at that, well, there are various Primarchs that kind of have this position, but, or I suppose, that have this sort of role given to them. But next to Lehman Russ, it is heavily implied that the Lion is the one you turn to when you need someone on his stature, say, other Space Marine legions or another Primarch taken down.
Gotcha. He's the
And
go-to guy. You know
he
he can
will
get the job done.
he's going to get the job done. He's not going to care about sentiment. He's not going to be blinded by brotherly compassion or brotherly relation. It's, I've got a job. You gave me my task. I will do it. He doesn't have time for traitors. He doesn't have time for parties. He doesn't have time for any of that. He doesn't care about it.
You go to him if you want a job done that doesn't require much politicking.
Oh, he hates politics. He
I can
hated,
imagine.
like, even on Caliban, he hated that, having to deal with that. And it's part of the reason that some of the problems down the line got as bad as they did. Because he
Ooh.
didn't care about it. He didn't even really want to be their leader. He just wanted to kill monsters. And then he killed all the monsters and like, cool, you're pretty much our king. And he's like, oh my god, alright, fine, whatever, just whatever. Leave me alone. Sure. I'll just do it if you guys desperately want me to. Fine, fine. Like, for him, the Emperor coming was pretty much like, for a time, one of the best things that could have happened to him, arguably. Because he was not in any way content. Some Primarchs, like their little empires, he never wanted one. He never cared about one. So, the Emperor coming up and saying, cool, hey, there's enemies I need you to fight. He was on that ship immediately.
He's like, I'm out of here, losers.
He's like, I'm gone. I do not care about this politicking. I do not care about appeasing your egos. There's an enemy. My blade needs to get bloody.
Like, let the governor handle it, or whoever gets appointed as the new head of the planet.
Problem is that art. Well, again, this does cause some problems. He. This is where this reputation pretty much sticks with him, and while he's very good at what he does, like I said, it makes it very difficult at times for him to relate with his different brothers.
Mhm.
Because not only does he have that grim, determined countenance, he's also the keeper of many, many secrets and naturally paranoid from just generally being himself, and also probably the childhood he spent where every little crack and twig and break and hoot and noise in the forest might have been something about to kill him.
Like that can happen.
So he's a very paranoid guy. He doesn't trust. He's very paranoid. He's very grim. He's very determined. And all this makes a cocktail of just a savage, sometimes pretty unpleasant man to be around, which becomes a problem when the Horus heresy hits.
Ooh.
As, a little bit of a speed run on it. Horus, things happened with Horus. Goes a little crazy, decides to go to betray his dad. Starts a whole civil war. He is making a beeline to Terra because dad's there, and also nothing destroys the human spirit better and then would bring the power of human future into the Chaos God's hands faster than taking over and or destroying Terra, the heart and seat and birthplace of mankind. So Horus is doing his thing. There's a whole stuff at Esteban. He's being, harassed by other legions, but three of his biggest headaches have been successfully sidelined because of chaos magic. There's a massive warp storm. A large majority of three of the biggest Space Marine legions that haven't been half destroyed with the Esteban Dropside Massacre, they're kind of stuck. They can't really get through the storm well. It's going to take a lot of effort and time. And actually, Gilliman, at the very least, he kind of thinks the Terra might be lost already. So he creates a whole other smaller Imperium Secundus.
Mm-hmm.
And the lion ends up on there. And they don't really get along. They butt heads, very much. The lion wants to get up and go. He doesn't like sitting around, obviously.
Of course.
Gilliman is, of course, cautious and also trying to protect his own assets because he's got 500 worlds. He's got an empire unto an empire. He's gonna keep that thing safe, and he is very determined to ensure that Ultramar survives this. He wants to help Dad, but things are weird. So they're butting heads a little bit. There's actually one incident where a bunch of the Dark Angels are this close to just getting wrecked because, you know, the Lion's fleet is in orbit over Ultramar, the capital of this new Imperium Secundus, and a bunch of combat drop pods start being launched from ships, and Gilliman's like, what the hell are you doing? Why are your men dropping onto my planet? And the Lion's like, dude, I have no idea what's going on. And he actually has to be like, dude, I get it. I know I'm difficult to be around, but this is a mistake. I had nothing to do with this. Please don't murder all my kids because there's a very big, very powerful planetary shield that might not survive too much orbital bombardment, but it's more than powerful enough to splatter several hundred drop pods against it like a bug on a window.
Right.
So there's some incidents. They butt heads a lot, but eventually they discover that, okay, Hera is still holding strong. The Emperor's still alive. There's still hope. We need to make it. So they tear their way through the ruin storm, and they eventually, it's a whole thing. At some point we'll have to talk about the siege on Terra, but things go down. They're a bit too late. Dad confronts Horus. Horus dies. Dad ends up in the chair. The traitors are broken. They're running around. And what follows is what is known as the Great Scouring, with the traitors either trying to set up little empires in, space, trying to hold on to them, or running into the Eye of Terror, and the loyalists just blazing a path through the stars to murder them all.
Right. Warlords. No good warlords.
And the Lion is right up there with them. But he's running short on men. He's already had trouble for a while, with the various wars, the siege, the various battles, keeping the flanks clear. He needs more men. He comes back to Caliban to figure out, okay, well, I need more men, but I'm not really getting a bunch of them. What's going on here? Comes back to Caliban, gets fired upon from the planetary surface.
Ooh. Twist.
He's like, what the hell is going on? And this is where we divert a little bit back to Luther. And what would end up turning him from a Lion's second to what would be known as, the arch betrayer.
Oh, damn.
Because remember when I told you that, those politics and those grievances that the Lion didn't care about would become a problem?
Yes.
There were a lot of... Caliban changed a lot. They were already mad a lot when the Lion shifted things, but Caliban changed a lot overnight when the Imperium came. And you have an entire major culture that went from this, traditions of chivalry and one-on-one training and squires and knighthood and tradition and handing things down and honor and accolades to none of that really matters unless you are eligible to be a space marine. You're going to be redirected into the war machine that is the Imperium. Now, if you're capable, we'll send you to the front lines on some distant planet somewhere. Maybe, probably. So,
That sounds
there's
about right.
already
That sounds about right.
there's already a lot of people who are not happy at home.
Mhm.
Um, but then you have Luther. Now Luther, remember, he had been the Lion's, brother, mentor, father figure.
Right.
He was already kind of an older, elderly man-ish. And so he and a lot of the other knights that had served with and basically helped raise the lion, they weren't exactly eligible for the Space Marine full treatment, but that didn't mean they couldn't be changed. This actually happens to a fair few members of various legions where a lot of times the Primarchs come from their worlds with retinues or trusted advisors or dads, and they don't want to necessarily lose them. So what they do is they give them some of the treatments that Space Marines have. And so you end up with men who they're much stronger than the average man, much more durable and faster and smarter, and they get a lot of the enhancements and
Right.
some of the longevity. They don't get to become the full Space Marine. And so this tends to cause some friction, along with the difference between Terrans and various homeworlds. Because a lot of various legions, when they get their legion, they very quickly start replacing or adding their own homeworld natives to the legion
Mhm.
because that's their home, that's their people. They know what it's about. They know who they can trust. And yeah, these are my kids, but they're also the kids dad picked for me. I want my own. And so you often have a fair bit of friction in legions between those who were born on Terra and turned on Terra and
Mhm.
those who are s- often given automatic brownie points by virtue of being born or coming from dad's new home.
Also, it's like the people on the outside get more points, they get more treatment than
The people on the
Terran-born.
outside very quickly become the people on the inside.
Right. Reminds me of, like, other galactic empires of, like, how you deal with planetary versus the galactic identity of, like, forming your army and making sure, like, "Hey, we're all part of one empire here, doesn't matter where you came from, you're now here."
Precisely.
Of course, that sometimes bites you in the butt when, it's like Tarkin decided to blow up Alderaan, and all the Alderaanian officers in the army are like, "Hey, wait a minute. Why'd you blow up my world?" Turns rebellion.
Yeah.
Some of
What
them
was
didn't do
yeah.
that. Some of them actually kind of played ninjutsu on their brains and like, "Oh, wait, my planet actually did deserve this." That's the whole other story.
Whatever you gotta do is cope.
Exactly.
Where was I? Oh. So, there's interlegion friction.
Mhm,
There's a little bit of not necessarily resentment, but kind of some side eyeing from people when who has been, indoctrinated and given all this training and become this incredibly powerful demigod or demi-human as sorts, is
mhm,
also expected to obey this old man who got half your organs and
mhm,
got into his position by virtue of being the Primarch's favorite.
mhm.
Now, there were many who did respect Luther, and not a bunch of them necessarily question the lion's judgment. But again, you do have a fair few of these, Caliban born natives who aren't exactly happy with their new lot in life, and also they're not exactly happy with how the lion does things, because mostly the lion was content when he was on Caliban to let them do their own thing or whatever. I'm gonna do mine. As long as they come when I call, I don't really care. They can have a party, I don't care. When
Right.
it comes to the Dark Angels, it's not that that stuff is forbidden, but that's kind of, again, their part. It's kind of what their dad is doing. They're emulating. Not only is it the metaphysical whatever that the gene seed is changing their mental processes and how they tend to approach the world. They're also trying to impress dad, and that often means emulating dad. So dad cares nothing about the celebration. He cares nothing about praising our accomplishments. He cares nothing about giving mighty speeches, or even sometimes your friendly pat on the shoulder or something. He doesn't care about that. His whole thing is, all right, I lead by example. Everyone will do it because clearly I'm setting a great example. So why wouldn't they do it? Why do
Hmm.
they need stuff like, you know, validation or um emotional honesty or praise? That's not your light in life. You're a soldier. You do what your job. So this is kind of a weird sort of feeling for a lot of these Caliban natives who, they have these great traditions of honor and valor and praise and glory, especially glory. They this urge to seek glory, to have your legacy carved into history. And suddenly you're in a legion that headed by a dude who cares absolutely nothing about that.
I mean, it's true. Yeah, it's like I wonder if this is how Mandalorians felt whenever they joined the Empire, where it's like, oh wow, they don't even care about the Mando culture at all.
I mean, most people throughout most of Star Wars history didn't care about the Mando culture because the
That's
Mando
true.
culture tended to be killing other people.
That's true. But I can see the yeah, definitely culture shock where the Empire trying to homogenize everything.
They were the Mandos are weird. Well, the Mando culture is just it was a mess. It's been a burning mess. A lot of people like to blame what's her name? Sabine,
Karen
not Sabine.
Travis? Karen
No, not
Travis?
her. Oh, her too. But
Bo-Katan?
I meant in
Bo-
lore.
oh,
No, not
Bo-Katan?
Bo-Katan.
Satine?
Her sister.
Satine? Duchess
Yeah, a lot of people like to complain about Duchess Satine, and it's like she was the closest thing they had to a
Satine.
modern, intelligent leader with a future in mind.
That's true.
But we'll rant about Star Wars another day. So this, for Luther especially, has slowly begun brewing this really ugly set of emotions within him. And for him, it slowly doesn't. He'd already been having issues before because your brother son student has
Mhm.
long outstripped you in physical prowess, in intelligence, in glory, in deeds. People who once looked to you for wisdom and advice and wanted to be on your team, who wanted to follow in your shadow, who wanted to be in your clique, they want to
Mm.
be in his clique.
Oh
And that's
god, it's high school, but with more murder. It's high school.
dude, 95% of all the problems in Wolf 40K is just high school with giants in power armor.
Oh gosh. That makes so much
And
sense.
for him, it's like that makes him feel some sort of way because, okay, well, the dude I raised slash taught slash, sponsored is now in my position and better in half the time and is doing 10 times better than I ever could by virtue of being a freak of nature. And it gets worse when, they get their legion and Luther joins the Lion going into the stars and seeing
Mhm.
all these new worlds and these new battles and just like being in a position where like you are not encouraged to do any of that, to talk about your glory and seek it out and do any of that. No matter how competent you are, you're always going to be in the lion's shadow. And there's one vital moment not long after the Rangdan genocide. Or sorry, well, it's a xenocide. It's listed as a xenocide, but it was really a genocide too. Um,
There a difference? What's the difference?
I think genocide is like human.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, but not long after this, massive campaign,
Mm.
there is a moment where they're at a planet that, unbeknownst to them, has become, infected by chaos. And there's a moment where the lion is with a delegation.
Mhm.
And Luther and one of his buddies and, squad they're downstairs and like standing guard near one of their ships or whatever. And they take a look at the delegation ship and abruptly Luther looks at it and looks it over and orders, the squad to leave the hangar. Doesn't tell anyone why. And one of his squad, his buddy, he comes back and he's like, "Hey, that was kind of weird. Why'd you tell us to do that?" And Luther confesses that there is a massive, powerful bomb on the delegation ship
Mm. Oh, wow.
that, if it went off, could possibly kill the lion. And he confesses that, like, he's had these terrible, terrible moment. He's had this terrible, terrible moment just then where he looked at the bomb and didn't feel the need or desire to warn the lion. Because if the lion died, he would have what the lion has: the glory, the power. And he hates himself for thinking this, but he also can't help just like confessing how he been feeling this jealousy and this pain and just unable to express it.
Mhm.
And he does end up changing his mind. He does end up stopping the bomb
Mhm.
and saving his brother, son, student. But something has kind of changed. Like the seed that has been planted for a long time has started to slowly sprout. And the lion kind of senses something too, but not necessarily that he wanted to. Well, he kind of senses that. I think that Luther had doubts, and Luther felt some kind of way. And in his own attempt to, and later he discusses it in some of his books, and he discusses mention his thinking about Luther like sent millennia later, and it's like, yeah, he intended it to be something of a punishment, but also a reward and sign of trust by sending Luther and several of these Caliban esque space marines, these veterans, back to Caliban to help train up the Space Marine legions faster, give them advice, and churn them out faster so they can join the Lion on the Stars. And he meant for this to be, yes, a punishment. Yes, a sort of, okay, you did some shady stuff. I got my eye on you, but also a sign of, I'm trusting you with my future. Unfortunately, as is the problem for 98% of everything in 40K, none of this is communicated.
Of course.
So, the Lion's just like, oh, well, he'll just get the message. Even though I barely can understand my own message mentally. And everyone else, Luther and these, several hundred of these space marines and veterans being sent back, they're like, oh, he doesn't trust us. He doesn't need us. He's abandoning us.
Oh,
Like,
damn.
you're not gonna get. He doesn't want us to share his glory. He doesn't want us to be with him. We're just being cast off. You're sending us to do the work of old men. We're in our prime, and you want us to like go and be teachers? You want us to just, instead of fighting at your side, you want us to just be drill sergeants and teachers and garrisons and just create this, new future to go off and be with you instead of us? Even
Mhm.
after we've served you for so long, even after we've done all this, these battles and these wars and these campaigns with you, that's how you feel about us? That's how you treat us? So they feel some kind of way. And as time goes on, this gets worse because the Lion doesn't really bother to come back to Caliban or really barely talk to the reports Luther is sending him, or at a certain point he just kind of stops answering at all. So from their perspective, the Lion doesn't give one hoot about them. And this growing fear and resentment is a
Right.
perfect crack in the armor for chaos to slip in.
Ooh. So chaos
So,
kind of can come in if, like, there's, like, emotional distrust and stuff?
well, usually it helps when there's like something chaos infected around. If I remember correctly, there was like a Easter or something that really kind of. Plus, they've got proximity to the Eye of Terror,
That's
so
true.
they were already in some dire straits anyway.
That's fair, yep.
But slowly, Luther starts, you know, turning his a bunch of his fellow Space Marines against the Lion.
Mhm.
And they send out recruits, but the number of recruits they're sending out tapers down. And they, as these, a bunch of these recruits, they start training these recruits to hate the Lion, to hate the Imperium.
Mhm.
These guys came to our home. They they upturned our traditions. They made us into their slaves. They made us into their patsies. The Lion doesn't give one hoot about you. He doesn't care about you. He just wants you to turn you into a weapon of war that he can just pick up and launch without so much as a how did you do. It doesn't matter that you're his son. He doesn't care about you being his son. Another weapon to him. So why should we be his weapons? Why should we go ahead and have to serve this this father who doesn't care, this brother who doesn't care, this foreign emperor who doesn't care about us? We're going to go ahead and secede. And it helps because Horus did it, and like so many other planets, they were like, awesome, this is the great time to break away from the Imperium. So Horus Heresy kicks off. Taliban goes ahead and they kill the loyalist elements of their, planet, and they declare themselves independent. And several of them, especially Luther, fully fall to chaos. And so when the Lion comes back, he comes back to a full on, like, finished civil war, and his entire homeworld pretty much turned against him. And he is pissed. He does not forgive, he doesn't forget, and he doesn't hesitate. So he's like, okay, I got a mission now. Figure out what's going on and end it. Figures out, can't you guys, my sons, you who should have been the pride of the Imperium, you of the First Legion, you turn to chaos? Orbital bombardment.
Well, I mean, it gets it done, so.
It's enough to put down the defenses. You know, there's a planetary shield, and there's a lot of like surface to orbit defenses that the orbital bombardment knocks out, and then he goes on the ground with several of his legion to confront Luther himself and confront these traitor space marines, almost like these angels that have, fallen.
Mm-hmm.
And these fallen and Luther, they're holed up in this monastery, their great fortress monastery, the stronghold of the Dark Angels.
Mm-hmm.
And when the lion comes up and confronts Luther, he's found that Luther has changed because he has been getting that warp steroids.
Oh no, not warp steroids.
And the Chaos Gods, they have found they're like, well, the first time with that one Primarch chorus didn't work well, but maybe we can try that with this guy, get some type of victory out of it. So he's fully become a Chaos champion. He is empowered by the Chaos Gods, and it's enough for him to stand up and even overpower the lion.
Oh dang. I guess those chaos gods steroids really do the trick.
It does, physically. Mentally is another story, as we'll find out. But he beats down the lion. The lion actually first wins and then hesitates to kill him, and then he mortally wounds the lion with a sorcerer's attack, with a warp sorcery attack. And upon doing this, it's enough to kind of snap him out of it, because chaos is feeding all of his worst impulses, and the moment he does this, it's enough for him to go like, oh crap, what have I done? Like, I betrayed my brother's son student, and for what? And he fully gives up. And this pisses off the Chaos Gods, because it's the second time they empowered someone like this, and he just, he dropped the ball again.
It's mad the chaos gods are just like, man, we just keep making shitty bets on these humans. Maybe we should try something different next time.
Actually, though, some of them, to be fair, they won, arguably. Well, we'll talk about it at some point down the line, but they won a lot with the Horus Heresy, but man, they're like, all right, how many times do we have to keep pushing ourselves into a human champion only for that champion to choke?
God dang it. Like, imagine it's like tossing the money aside and like, dang. Another
Like,
little
gotcha,
board.
all right. So they start throwing a tantrum, and the planet, Caliban, is heavily weakened because the lion spent a long freaking time hitting it with torpedoes and lasers. And also, the warp just has been raging with the battle. You remember that battle between Optimus and Megatron and Prime when they've got the Star Saber and the Dark Star Saber?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like every time they hit, it's just like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of like that, but on a massive scale.
Oh
Because you
gosh.
have two barely human sort of entities in a skin suit that looks like a person, a massive person. You got two of those clashing. You got the gods watching. And just like a bunch of people who It's just like the team that ends up like either actually both the winners and the losers kind of do this at different football games.
Mhm.
You know when there's like a football championship and things get out of hand following the game?
Soccer riot. You want the
Yeah,
riot?
that.
Yeah,
It's kind of
soccer
like
riot.
that,
Yeah, too many drunks.
only with massive entities of emotion and nebulous reality presence. They
Oof.
lash out. There's a lot of stuff going on, and at the end of everything, a bunch of people are dead. A bunch of these traitor marines, these fallen, have been punted across time and space, sucked into the
Mhm.
warp. Caliban has been split apart and sucked into the warp, and the only part that's left standing is their fortress monastery and the rock under it, just floating in space.
Oh, wow. Dang. I just kinda have this picture of, like, a giant castle just floating in space.
It
There's no
actually
atmosphere.
quite is. Like if you look up the rock,
Mhm.
for 40K, like the artwork for it is immaculate. It is amazing. It is quite literally just like the most. It is a massive castle. Like,
Dang.
oh,
I'm looking at it
this thing
now.
is
It's like,
huge, and the thing moves. It's mobile. It's fully mobile. That thing travels through the stars. It is warp capable.
how warp capable moving castle.
It's kind of like you know how the Death Star somehow inexplicably moves through hyperspace.
Yes.
It's that
Oh, wow. Damn.
through the warp. The thing moves. It's not just stuck in orbit. The thing moves through the freaking through space and the warp. It's frankly terrifying, actually.
Your own private castle battle station. Or yes, you just your own private castle spaceship.
Yeah, yeah. No, they go ahead. They um. So the Dark Angels are left with a floating fortress, a broken homeworld, and no dad because he's gone.
Oh, damn.
And they freak out. Quietly, though, because they're Dark Angels.
Externally, I am stoic, but internally, I feel sad.
Yeah. Because remember when I mentioned that pride thing?
Mhm.
The pride of being the first, the pride of being that trusted legion of the Emperor that he
Yes.
turned to, that he gave all that stuff to? Yeah. They are like, okay, so no one can know about this.
Just have, like, this image of, like, them all standing stoically, but internally just hear, internal screaming.
Pretty much, actually. They're like, no one can know about this. No one can ever know that the First Legion, his most trusted legion, the primary legion of the Imperium, that which everyone else came after us, no one can ever know that a bunch of us turned traitor. Like half the legion turned traitor.
Officially, there never was a First Legion rebellion on Camino or Karabakh.
Precisely. As far as everyone else is concerned, in theory, Caliban just went under attack from chaos and fell into the warp. There was no fallen. There was none of that. None of that happened.
Massive
What?
cover.
Oh, you have no idea. Uh,
Yikes.
this this means that they're not exactly happy when Gilliman comes up with the Codex Astartes and the rules about their chapters, but like they're pretty much like, okay, no, just go with it, just go with it, just go with it. Do not give anyone any reason to look at us closely.
Wow, I'm surprised they managed to keep it covered up as long as they did.
we'll talk about that in a second.
Oh no.
So, Legion gets split into chapters, about 1,000 Marines or so each. That means, and they're pretty big. So they get several successor chapters. This is where I say problem. Broken rule number 1 happens, which is you're not really supposed to interact with your successors too much. It's not that you could never do it. In fact, a lot of times successor chapters end up coming up together, especially in different campaigns. You're just really not supposed to come together, and your command is not supposed to come together and talk a lot, because that is doing exactly what the Codex Astartes was meant to do, which was separate a legion and prevent a legion from coming together ever again.
Ah, kind of reminds me of a little bit how in real life the Roman army kept trying to find ways to make sure that the Roman generals would just stop rebelling against each other. It reminds me of kind of some of the reformed Marcus Aurelius did, where it's like he didn't want to give one governor enough legions to control so they could just rebel and become emperor, and then just start the cycle all over again.
I mean, you say that, but remember Gilliman's shtick,
It's true.
Space Rome.
That's true. That's true.
He's literally Space Rome.
He's space Marcus Aurelius.
He's Space Julius Caesar, I think, technically. But Marcus Aurelius he's a blend. He pretty much almost every relatively sane Roman emperor and military leader about. That's just Gilliman in a nutshell.
He's all the not crazy ones.
Precisely. Um, but that's rule number 1. They're kind of breaking because you're not really supposed to be interacting with your successor chapters so much and so often, which they do anyway. And so you pretty much have a legion pretending it's spread out across a dozen or so chapters.
Mm-hmm.
But their command is talking to each other, they're planning to each other. They collectively, the vast majority of them that have the gene seed of, the lion, and therefore our successors, the vast majority of them come to call themselves the Unforgiven.
Ooh.
Because in their eyes, until their sacred mission is done, they cannot be forgiven in the eyes of the Emperor for their betrayal.
But their sacred mission will never be done. It is eternal.
Which leads us to the sacred mission itself, and part of the reason why their command structure tends to talk so often, even though they're really not supposed to do that. Remember when I said a bunch of the Fallen got sucked across space and time into the warp?
Yeah.
Yeah, that means that you have hundreds of thousands of, well, not hundreds of thousands, but you have thousands at the very least, tens of thousands probably, of traitor space marines, these Fallen, who some might just pop up 20 years ago before the actual heresy. Some don't pop up until the 40k itself. Some have just popped up throughout the history. The warp is weird. You may pop in 5 minutes from now or 500 years from now.
That kind of time travel where it's like, I'm just sitting around here for like a couple minutes, but then I come out. It's like, oh wait, what do you mean I've been gone for 1,000 years?
Pretty much. Some were like, you have some who are just popping out like, oh wait, Caliban's gone. Oops. You have some who popped out and laid low. You had some who popped out and ended up, just shedding not shedding their armor because that's a good piece of tech, but you have some who were like, that was a really bad decision. Bounty hunting pays well. You have some who went ahead and full on joined Chaos or joined various traitor warbands. So the Fallen are all over the galaxy. And the Dark Angels have tasked themselves with hunting these guys down and killing them, or as what they really want to do is make them repent. And when they
Repent?
hunt all these down, because in their eyes, and this is why there's a particular distinction between the Fallen
Mhm.
and like another like traitor Dark Angel or traitor Dark Angel successor, where in their mind, the Fallen, they sinned, but they sinned because they were tricked.
Mhm.
Because Luther poisoned their minds. Because, Lion wasn't coming back. Most of these Fallen had never even seen the Lion. They had no idea what Dad looked like. They had no idea really what Dad. All they really had was Luther's interpretation and what he was telling them to go on. And, some warp stuff too, which was helping the poison go along. So, in the Dark Angel's eyes, it's like, okay, well, you were tricked by Luther, and we understand that. You're still going to die for it, but once you've gone ahead and accepted that you did wrong for being a traitor and turning your back on your emperor and your father, you will be given a nice, clean death.
How lovely. Mhm.
You don't, we'll torture you constantly
Oh, damn.
until you repent. Think Catholic torture,
Oh, no.
but worse, because that's a very durable man and you need something to break him.
Ooh.
Yeah.
They were taking the death, honestly.
This this quest has pretty much consumed them for the better part of 10,000 years, and it has dictated everything the primary chapter and their successors do,
Mhm.
because they're not immortal. They're not, well, theoretically, they're not immortal. You can't, you can't forget the quest, but like, you can't tell the entire chapter, especially the ones who weren't there, because loose lips sink ships.
Exactly.
So what do? You create an elaborate group of, or you create elaborate groups upon groups upon groups upon groups upon groups of secret keepers and ranks and different initiate orders and passwords and organizations and pretty much every part of them that made them so good at keeping secrets from the rest of the Imperium got turned inward. And now you have secrets upon secrets upon secrets.
I love
Where
the idea of, like, when they're like, "We shall create the first password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5." Excellent. Next one. That's
I mean, if you go from it from that logic, it's okay, well, you got your average neophyte. Maybe they know the password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To the Grand Master of the Order, or sorry, Grand Master of the chapter, and his password is the sequence of pi in which he has memorized.
damn.
Like, that is the level of you. Nobody except the dude at the very top of the Dark Angel specifically knows the full secrets, not only of what happened with Caliban and Luther, but also the secrets I'll tell you about in a second, particularly what happened afterwards. So you have entire chapters and ranks within that chapter who some know this, some know that, some know this, and some know nothing. And so there's allegories, there's hidden messages, there's fables that are taught to their neophytes and their initiates that have little threads of truth in them that you don't start understanding until you get to this rank. And maybe you kind of, someone might say something and they're kind of testing, or you talk to your chaplain, you have this kind of mindset, or you learn this little thing and you react this way, and slowly you're shifted about, and slowly as you gain in prowess and skill and information, you are moved about. You are given more information. You are given this position. Someone tells you this. Maybe someone hints at that. Maybe you learn that by accident, and people kind of like, you get these quiet tests. Maybe you learn something, or you think you learned something because you have a feeling that you knew something once, but your head hurts, like you've been mind wiped.
Oh, Jesus.
And this is just the culture of the Dark Angels and their successors and how they've been doing this for 10,000 years. Not only amongst themselves, but also like two other chapters, other Space Marine chapters. Like there is a one particular story where they they ended up in a joint operation with the, if I remember correctly, it was the Black Templars. And the Black Templars found a guy who was leading these cultists. And he was
Mhm.
dressed in dark armor with ancient dark armor, like heresy era dark armor that hadn't been used in thousands of years. So they took the guy prisoner. Like they're like, okay, well, we want to know answers. We want some information. They took him prisoner on their ship, and the Dark Angels were like, give him to us. And they're like, no, he's our prisoner. We want to know what he knows. And the Dark Angels, with their fleet, turned their guns on their allies and said, give him to us. And
Ooh.
so the dude escaped. And funnily enough, that task force of the Black Templars was never found in Imperium space again. The Dark Angels came back, their allies didn't.
Yee.
And they have gained. It's kind of funny because, like, they're like, okay, cool. We're keeping the secret. No one knows about the secret. We've kept this secret forever. None shall know of our ancient sin, or at least those in the know. And to everyone else in the Imperium, they're like, they look at each other and they're like, so they're definitely hiding something, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's what they're telling each other. Because, like, they're so shady about it. It's like, okay, dude, every time you meet up with another chapter, you never really talk to us. You never really, like, communicate with us. You're super shady about everything. You all go conspicuously silent when one of us comes near. And more than once, we'll be fighting a war, and suddenly you guys pull out and run and don't say a word to us. And
Yeah, I'd
that's
be
because,
suspicious too.
what happened? Sorry.
Yeah, I'd be suspicious of them too.
Yeah. Because the hunt for the fallen supersedes everything, even at times your allies, even at times, even arguably the Imperium.
Poor Gillum, he's like, why are we not, why are they not following the orders? Like, got hunt for the fallen. Sorry.
So this actually is, um, this is actually a funny segue into the modern day because Dark Angels, secrets abound. Some secrets are, they don't have as much control as they'd like to anymore. For starters, one major secret, not just the Fallen, what happened with Luther.
Yeah, what did happen with Luther? Bet that's nothing
Because as
good.
far as everyone else knows, the vast 99.9999% of the chapter knows, Luther died. As far as that 0.0000001% knows, the Grand Master knows, Luther's in the bottom of the monastery, locked up. At least he was. He's gone now.
Oof. Did they just torture him until he repented and he never did?
Uh, that's the funny thing. They have tried. They've tortured him. They've ordered him to repent, and he he lost his mind. He has for the better part of 10,000 years been speaking what is, to anyone who's not listening enough, mostly gibberish. But if you do listen, you kind of start to realize he's talking about events and moments and times in history, both in the present, yes, but also the past and the future.
Oh, he's one of those guys who, like, seems like he's saying nonsense, but in reality, he's like, "Oh, no, you are like a prophet prophesizing something."
He was given the title known as the Dark Oracle, and there have been grandmasters throughout history who have gone down to him and talked to him to try to get something out of him. He's not always coherent, it's not always logical. But sometimes there's moments, sometimes there's bits and pieces in there that give them clues or will like tell information about what's set to come that they can try to use.
Mhm.
But they have been pushing, they've been trying for 10,000 years to get him to repent. And every time, for 10,000 years, he spent that 10,000 years when he was lucid, claiming that he had no need to repent because the lion himself would come back and give him repentance and declare him innocent.
That's very optimistic of him. Think that.
Well, at some point, there was a demon incursion and Luther went missing. Um, they don't know where he is now. But also, this segues nicely into one of our last little bits, which is a lion. Because, they were like, okay, well, we don't. Unless they see the body, every Space Marine leader, chapter legion, holds out hope that their Primarch is still living.
Oh, that's right, 'cause they don't know what happened to him either.
If you don't see a body, there's a good chance your Primarch's just kicking around somewhere. And so they
Just
never
chill.
found the lion's body,
Mhm.
and they're like, oh, maybe they don't really know where he is, but maybe he's still alive. Turns out he was in their own fortress monastery at the very, very bottom. And because there's a lot of secret chambers in there that even like the grandmasters don't know about. Lion was
Mhm.
just in there sleeping,
Just napping, taking a nap, resting his eyes a little
taking
bit.
10,000 year nap, and he woke up with the ability to just basically misty step with an entire forest.
Wow.
And so he has just been popping up on battlefields with a massive, like, Calibanian forest behind him and with him. He's just using this forest of Caliban to his own little sub pocket of the warp to move through reality and the immaterium and pop up on battlefields and just start laying waste. But that's not all he's doing.
The Ent's got nothing on this guy.
He's been finding his fallen,
Mm.
and some mysteriously find themselves in the Dark Angel's clutches, and others find themselves forgiven. Because it turns out, after a 10,000 year nap, a lion has gained something incredibly valuable in the 40k universe, which is a modicum of emotional intelligence.
Hallelujah, he's in a good mood. Well, I mean, hey, sometimes a nap is all it takes, right? Just
Absolutely. Dude has been needed a nap for, he was being hunted from day one. He just needed a nap.
like, you know what? I get why you betrayed me. I would have betrayed me too if I didn't get have a nice nap.
Yeah. I I understand why you burned the house down. I understand that, yes, I probably should have come back sooner. I know I said I was buying cigarettes and milk.
Yep.
I probably should have just gone ahead and bought them and come back.
I get it, little Timmy.
And so you have these fallen who he's coming up with these fallen and he is forgiving them and giving them repentance. And several of them will then go on to join his retinue as what is known as the Risen.
The Risen. That's cool.
And they are just following the lion through time and space. Well, mostly space at this point. They're just following the lion in his mobile fortress mobile, popping up on battlefields, finding new fallen, forgiving them, just turning the tide of wars. And it's really funny because, like so many other things, the Dark Angels are like, we should keep this secret.
Of course they would do that. They love their secrets.
And they're like, what? What do you mean? We don't know this. The lion is still lost. And everyone's like, dude, we have like 50 billion reports of this 13-foot tall armored man copping out of a forest. That was a desert. A forest just grew up in a desert.
Yeah, that'd be hard to keep a secret.
Yeah. There's also arguably. I always wondered. There's also arguably, and I think at one point we'll probably talk a little bit more about this if we get to an episode about their ranks.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also something. There's arguably a kind of because the lion hasn't really gone up to his legion or his chapters and been like, "Sup, I'm back." He, as far as they're concerned, he still hasn't come back with the milk.
Still at the store getting the cigarettes.
It's a little bit like a dad who. It's a little bit like It's a little bit like having a dad who had like two families, and neither of them knows about the other, and one gets incredibly neglected, and the other one doesn't. Well, now he's reversed course and is dealing with and talking to his neglected kids, leaving the one that wasn't kind of left in the rut. But it's kind of. Oh, what'd you say?
I said, well, that doesn't really solve the problem for him. Now he's just gonna have another.
They're a little better off. Like they weren't being hunted across the galaxy, and like one group was being if one group is a fugitive to an entire chapter that is willing to drop a campaign like a hot potato to come after you, maybe you should go to that group first.
That's true. I did not have this image of like this war happening. It's like we're near the enemy capital. It's almost about the war's almost over, and then they're like, "We got a report of a fallen," and then like all the legion just like, "Bye bye," like
absolutely that is what they will do.
And the enemy just like, "What just happened?"
It will absolutely do that. And half the time, the vast majority of the Legion doesn't even know why. They're just following orders. They're like, alright, well, the chapter master or commander or whatever said, hey, go here. You guys got this, right? Bye.
Like, but we're about to take the enemy capital. The leadership's about to surrender. Nope.
We have new orders, bye. What are those orders? We don't know, bye.
I just have this, and then the enemy's just like, what the heck happened? It'd be like if you almost won a war, then you just quit last minute because you want to do something else.
They've absolutely done that.
Which sounds stupid in fiction, but I've seen the real world. That does seem to happen these days.
Yeah, there's a reason why a lot of their allies are like, are you going to stay this time? Can we trust you?
Can the other legions get your support when we need you?
Are you actually okay? Well, we'll just operate like they're gonna go leave at any time because we don't know what's up with them. Yeah,
Imagine
no.
if Terra was had to be defended by them and only them. It's like, oh gosh.
Mm. No, they've got their own thing. Terra's got its own like devoted groups, but
Okay.
so it's pretty sick. But yeah, it we're kind of in a weird position. Um, and he hasn't really talked to the Legion proper, and or rather the chapters proper, but like he's talked to one or two. There's actually this one interesting short story where an a chaplain, an interrogation chaplain, he's coming back to finish his interrogation on a fallen, and he comes up to the cell and finds that there's a massive hooded man there,
Mhm.
and guy doesn't say anything to him, just bids him to wait, goes into the cell. The chaplain's out there waiting, and a few hours later he opens the cell, no one's in there. And
Wow.
so the fallen's gone. He instinctively knows, because that's what Space Marines can do. He instinctively knows Dad was here, and he took my prisoner. And there's this uncomfortable moment where he's almost starts to kind of have to think about things, because he's like, hold on, been decades extracting confessions from these fallen. And I was sure, absolutely would have bet my life on it, that the one I was interrogating now was guilty, and I was going to get a confession out of him. But Dad says he's innocent by virtue of the fact that he took him with him. So if that one was innocent, what does it say about the other ones I tortured?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's kind of. There's the question as to whether or not something is gearing up, because you have the Dark Angels and their various, successor chapters who have been perpetuating this cycle for 10,000 years,
Mhm.
only just as kind of arguably what their dad probably would have done, only for Dad to come back and indirectly, through his own action, say, no, you're doing it wrong. So what does that say about us?
Maybe you
I
are
don't know yet.
flawed.
Well, that in itself, to be fair to them, that in itself, you can almost argue that their caution, beyond their pride, their caution has been warranted. Because you have a lot of people are a little leery about Space Marines anyway,
Mhm.
given that, at some point, 10,000 years ago, several hundreds of thousands of them almost destroyed the Imperium.
Mhm.
So, for a lot of people, especially when you have people like Inquisitors, whose whole job it is to root out secrets and potential heresy. Space Marines, some of them consider Space Marines bombs waiting to happen. Some of them consider them the Emperor's holy creations. They don't know. And for the Dark Angels, in particular, the First Legion, the template upon which every other Space Primarch and subsequent Space Marine was built upon,
Mhm.
you can almost argue that them keeping that secret of the Fallen and the fall of Caliban, is as much a kindness and duty to their cousins as it is to keep their pride and legacy intact. Because if you discover that they had traitors that the lion, sons of the lion, the stalwart lion, turned traitor. That means it wasn't just chaos. It wasn't just um, Horus and a few others being bad seeds. There's an argument to be made that Space Marines and Primarchs even are fundamentally flawed. That the batter was messed up. There's something messed up in the mix. Because the Custodians don't have that problem. But the Primarchs did. The Space Marines did. And if you can't argue that it's time and distance, that you were flawed from the beginning, that there was a mistake already innate within there, what does that say about every other Space Marine?
The entire institution is problematic.
Exactly.
Dun,
So in an
dun, dun.
untwisted way, you could argue they're protecting their cousins. Granted, a lot of it they are benefiting them for themselves and their legacy and their own fear of failure, but there is a twisted argument to be made that they're helping to protect others as well.
So, does the Empire in general just have like various institutions that all kind of distrust each other? You know, they got the Space Marines, you have the Inquisitors, there's like a secret police, and then it's like these guys and these guys. It's like how the Army and the Navy don't like each other, and there's a rivalry, and then you got a, this group, right?
I mean, yeah. The Army and Navy not as much. Like they used to be together. They used to be combined. They had to be split post heresy because they're like, yeah, we can't have that again.
That's fair.
But like, oh man, even just between allies, just Space Marine chapters distrusting each other, between the Inquisition, between politics, between the High Lords, between all these various institutions, they all distrust each other because like 10,000 years ago we almost crashed and burned.
That's fair.
And
That's fair.
if we're not careful, it'll happen again. No one can be trusted. Not even the sons and grandsons of the Emperor can be trusted.
And the Empire is like just on shaky foundations, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mentioned it before. You have a shaky foundation that was then caulked over and then had another shaky foundation built upon it by two different people. And now the second one came back and is trying to fix it again. And half the time, the most he can do is just keep adding more caulk.
Ugh.
That is, in a nutshell, the story of the Dark Angels. Where they came from, where they are now, and what we might be looking forward to.
Well, dang. I guess in this case, the lion does care about the opinions of some sheep. I had to use that line.
Nice.
Yay.
Ba-dum-tish.
But yeah, the First Legion, the Dark Angels, what a ride. Story betrayal, knights, chivalry, King Arthur got a ride. That was quite something. Quite something. Are there any, I guess before we should end, this is actually something I'm going to try and ask more about at the end of every session if I remember. Any stories recommended for anybody who wants to read a book or a comic about the Dark Angels?
A lot of, again, a lot of a lot of some of the best stuff you can do, and I desperately wish that I had access to the White Dwarf magazines, because man, there's just like different stuff and little
Mhm.
bits and pieces that just are in there. Um, but obviously, I think a lot of it is split across different um perspectives, but obviously there's well, I say obviously. The Lion, Son of the Forest is one of the more modern ones.
Mhm.
But if you want to go back to like the Horus Heresy era, there's let's see if I remember. There is because a lot of the more Horus Heresy era stuff has a lot of the Horus Heresy stuff has different POVs. There are various Primarch novels.
Mhm.
Angels of Caliban, I think, is one. There's another one. There's one just like. Let me look up his name again because I remember his name was like Gav. There's Son of the Lion. That's the more modern ones. There's the Lion, if I remember correctly. There's he writes. He's written a lot of different stuff for the Dark Angels. Um, he's written he's written a lot of like great stuff. Yeah, he's written a lot of books for the Dark Angels. He's written a lot of books for a lot of stuff by Gav Thorpe, Gavthorpe.
Gapthorpe.
Yeah, he's written a lot of stuff for various members and various um key figures of the Dark Angels.
Mhm. Interesting.
Uh, it given like a lot of good kind of insight into the intricacies of like the very complicated ranks of the Dark Angels. I've read. Oh, there's more than I haven't read. Like I remember looking. Yeah, he's written a fair bit of like some that are. He's written a lot of books for the Horus Heresy, and there's a lot of like multi stories and omnibus short stories throughout the Horus Heresy. But yeah, Gav Thorpe, he's got a whole bunch of books, frankly, which is really. Ooh, he's got games. I didn't know he had games.
Very nice.
Oh yeah.
There's some
Oh
games.
yeah. Oh, no wonder it felt familiar at times. He worked on For Honor.
Oh, what's that?
Remember that one like PvP game where it was like you could play as a Viking or a samurai or like a knight?
A little bit, maybe. No.
Uh, you remember? Oh, I didn't know. Oh, there's one for Deathwing too. I need to go into that. Um, and I remember playing For Honor back in the day. Okay, that's actually makes a fair bit of sense. But yeah, no. A lot of it is, and a lot of these books are like I spend a lot of the time reading the short stories for the Dark Angels.
Mhm.
The and I definitely need to go back into several of like I definitely need to get my hands on I want to get my hands on Ravenwing because every little bit is just like interesting little tidbits and looks into the these various, especially the Dark Angels and various Space Marine groups. But like the the Black Library has like amazing sets of books. Um, oh, that's why he was so familiar. Cause I knew I'd seen him several times with between what is it? Between the Lion and he's that's why his name was on my mind because he's on the book I'm reading now, which is the Last Chancer series, which
Ooh.
they're they are really fun, and I hope we'll talk about them at some point. Hopefully, when we talk about penal legions and just like um penal legions, probably it's probably a separate episode from the guard because yeah. But yeah, no, look him up. He writes a lot of great books. He writes a lot of great little insights into various groups and time frames.
Mhm.
But for now, if you're not willing to read it up, and if you're like me, who only has time to consume so many books at a time,
I mean, I'm trying to I'm trying to read my own couple books right now. I'm trying to read the first Rogue Squadron book by Michael Stackpole from the 90s.
nice. If you guys don't always have time to read everything, and you want both recommendations and also just a quick little run through of items, stick with us. Stay with us as we grow Warhammer and Weebs, grow the channel. I'm having some fair bit of fun.
Me
I hope you
too.
guys are having fun. I'm glad you're having fun. And
I
I
feel like I've
definitely
learned
hope
more
to have
about
fun
Warhammer than I have in my entire life. It's kind of nice and to see some of the stuff from Warhammer. Whenever somebody posts, it's like, oh, now I understand that reference. I'm kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
that. America, like, oh, I now understand what this means. So that's what that is.
Oh yeah. At some point, man, there's so many memes and references that like Warhammer's just rife in the cultural zeitgeist in a way that I don't think we acknowledge as much as we should. Um, but yeah, do you guys want to go ahead, spend more time with us? Listen to my ramblings, listen to Joel's rambling, which is soon to come up in our next episode.
I gotta think of a good one. Where to start, man? Where to start?
Hey, you've got a lot of material.
Oh, I know.
Stick with us, have fun with us, give us some chance, keep listening, try to help us support the channel and grow the channel. And I'm Kamara.
I'm Joel.
This has been Warhammer and Weebs. Thanks for listening.